Hey all, Scott here from Art of the Genre, and today we are going to do fast talking, which is going to be dealing with the setting of Conan. Of course, this is always done in my fast RPG, and Conan is something, I mean, pretty much anybody who's ever played any kind of fantasy knows about it. Obviously, it's been recreated in RPG terms all the way back to the TSR box set for Conan that kind of replicated the movies, and then has gone into D20 Conan and various other iterations moving up through the days. But obviously, Conan comes from Robert E. Howard and his various books. If you've ever read any of it, it was kind of immortalized in the Conan comic books from Marvel, and then it's taken over by Dark Horse and other particulars. And even you can see all kinds of. This is one of my favorite reference pieces for Conan, this art book that takes you through the entire setting of Conan in a great fashion. And I use this for all of my games as well as comics and of course the books. But when looking at something like Conan, um, it's a very dynamic swords and sorcery setting. Obviously, most of you would recognize it. From let's say up here in the reference to the comic books. There's Conan and Belit, and then of course Arnold Schwarzenegger's immortalizing Conan in the early 80s with Conan the Barbarian and the lesser Conan the Destroyer. But nevertheless, Conan is an absolutely great setting in Swords and Sorcery that mirrors what I kind of talked about a little bit in the Stormbringer game for Elric on Fast Talking as well, because some of the changes that you look on it through my notes in one of the things that you have to deal with, and this is specifically shown here um, in these particular pictures, I had to add in a new faded trait that I've used on several different occasions for several different games. It's not something I put in all my games because it's really kind of silly, but it is something that I think adds a new wrinkle to it. The faded trait is called nearly nude defense, and basically what it says is the less clothing you wear, the harder it is to hit you and the tougher you are, because obviously in the renditions in the comics and in the movies, you can see that Conan and a lot of his crew, including Belit, which she's actually wearing more clothing than she normally does in that particular picture, and like somebody like Red Sonja, who's obviously in this Hyborian universe. With her chainmail bikini, would be wearing next to nothing, and yet they just don't get killed. And that's because they have this faded trait in the fast system called nearly nude defense. So that's something that's a new wrinkle for fast that I put in there as well. It's silly, it's comical, it's funny, but it goes along with the mass media for the product. Now, obviously, if you read Robert E. Howard, Conan girds himself in mail and shields and stuff like that. The whole thing because he's not an idiot in those. But in mixed media, you will see that often they're depicted in such a fashion. So as we look at Conan, one of the aspects of it, other than the nearly nude defense, which of course you can see here, although in the movie at the end here of Conan the Barbarian, you can see that Conan does have a nice helm on and some armor that he does put on for the final battle. And other various imagery of him continuing to show the nearly nude defense. This time he's just painted himself up, and the lower one he has next to nothing on as well. But the real change that we're talking about here that mirrors something in Stormbringer is how magic works within the fast system for Conan. And Conan, again, we were talking about the effects of summoning. And summoning and in Stormbringer dealt with demons and elementals, and also creatures of law. But nevertheless, in the course of Conan the Barbarian, the only magic that you have is sorcery, and that sorcery is all bound to demons as far as anyone can particularly tell. So even a good sorcerer as an above or a bad sorcerer below are all dealing in effects with how they can deal with a demonic presence in summoning demons. So there's a large section in my notes considering how demons work, how long it takes to summon them, because um, it is all a process. So in casting spells, there are no directed or instant spells within the Conan universe necessarily, unless you have learned a specific spell from a demon, or but otherwise you have to summon a demon. So let me put that into perspective. So um, to gain a spell, one of my characters in Conan was looking to gain a spell, and he summoned up a demon, which took him a number of hours to do, and that can take you up to 24 hours in a summoning, depending on if you're going light, medium, or heavy. But that demon that he summoned it for this explicit purpose to teach him a attack spell. This can explain in the book or this can explain in the game how you can get a spell that, let's say, does damage. My character, it's all randomly determined by the DM. So you can go for an attack spell, but you don't really know what you're going to get, because the demon itself that you summon up will be up to the DM on how they give you a spell. The spell I got was called Destruction of the Sands, and basically it allowed my sorcerer to summon up or control sand, which is everywhere, dirt, and have it kind of in a withering attack that would strip the skin off of somebody at more powerful levels. It could do area effect. And anyway, it was my character's ability to manipulate that spell. That was the only spell I had. I didn't want to summon any other demons for other spells. I didn't feel like it was necessary once I had that one, because that spell kind of grows with you with light, medium, heavy as you go up in levels, and you can manipulate it, and you're kind of known as a sorcerer who has that one particular spell. You could get others by summoning other demons, but each time you summon a demon, you risk the effects of corruption. And corruption is ultimately the downfall of all sorcerers within the confines of Conan, and especially the fast system. So if I summoned one demon, I would have to roll a resistance roll against that on a d10, and I would need to get anything higher than a 1. If I summon 2 demons, anything higher than a 2. 3 demons, anything higher than a 3, and so forth. So you can see, as soon as you've summoned 10 demons, you're done. You're going to get a point of corruption or more, depending on what demons you're summoning or the levels that they're summoning. And once you get that corruption, you get things like sleepless dreams, corrupting your arm turns into a talon. Horrible things begin to happen to you until you finally succumb completely to darkness, and like Thor is doing there, and you're done. So you lose that character. So one of the things that you're looking at is a balance when you're playing a good sorcerer in dealing with demons, but only dealing with it in a certain standpoint, and then utilizing what they've given you to do things other than evil, let's say. And that is how sorcery works. So you can get spell effects by summoning demons and having them teach you things, even healing, but those healings might be like the raps of Ishtar or something like that, and you have to create like mummy wraps or something and cast those spells into it, and then utilize them to wrap a wound or something like that, and then they would cast a heal, light, medium, or heavy. So it's really neat in the game sense for the DM, the game master, to come up with really cool wrinkles about how these spells work if you're utilizing them. Otherwise, the game is very, very base swords and sorcery, where you're talking about a plethora of human races. Again, just like you're dealing with in Stormbringer, I've gone through all the various races, Picts, Brethunians, Chimerians, there's tons of them in this world, and they all have different traits, and those add in as well. And then in the course of the game, if you're utilizing the Fast Compendium Volume 1, which just ended on Kickstarter, if you have a copy of that, you can add fantasy kits to your character archetypes, which would give you kind of you could go like a Pictish scout, which would be a ranger, a Brethunian knight, which could be a paladin, that kind of stuff. It's a Sumerian, which would be a barbarian. You could use that kit, and then it adds kind of more flavor, because you're really talking, in most of the world, they don't deal with sorcery. It's something that is very, very foreign to people. People know you're dealing with demons with it, even if you're a priest or something like that. the powers that you get still would have to be bound through demonic natures or otherworldly powers that are typically dark, like in Cthulhu or something like that, elder gods or something like that. Nothing is free, and nothing is particularly good unless you're willing to take the chance of corruption and trying to turn it good to your nature in the way that you use it in the world. But so when people encounter sorcery, you can do the enough talk and then throw a dagger at somebody, because you really don't want to deal with sorcery for the most part. But you can play them obviously in your party, and somebody will probably inevitably have some kind of connection, be they a priestly nature or a burgeoning sorcerer who might turn their back on sorcery. But eventually know that that character will be lost if you can do it, because to get demons, to summon demons, you have to kill somebody. You could sacrifice an evil Pict or something like that in a ceremony if the party will allow you to, which most of them won't. So you have to do it in secret. So it becomes sorcery becomes very dark and very concealed. So my characters would have to, or characters that I've seen employed in the game would have to find a way, a secret lair within a city, go into the low city and find a street person who's there, and drag them away and then kill them in a sacrifice over the course of the evening while everyone else is drinking at the bar and womanizing and stuff like that. So it gets really dark, and it gets really hard, especially if you have people in the party who are going to turn their back on the murder of people for you to summon demons and get power. So keep that in mind. And you can't in the game, you can't even find like books or scrolls that'll teach you anything. Everything is bound to a demon. So that is within the course of the fast system. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. And obviously there's a lot of rules concerning the various things that can happen to you in the summoning. When you're looking at stuff like here's just more pictures of various characters, NPCs, and followers. This is always something fun within the concept of Conan. If you have somebody, if you're playing Conan, obviously you could be one of his followers, except for they normally die. But nevertheless, there's always fun aspects to it. You can get great reference if you're looking at the comic books. As you can see here, each comic book basically is an adventure. If you buy an old comic book for $1, because they're not worth anything unless you're talking about Conan 1 or something. But you can always find cool adventure threads and stuff like that to build within the course of the universe, even if you're not using Conan. Or you could follow the aspects of Conan. Like one of the things that we always would find is you'd go to a city and you might hear of Conan has traveled here sometime before you and done something, and then you can bleed out the story there. So that's always really fun. You can do the same thing with Belit and her Black Corsairs, or you could go to Sonya. We've met Sonya in the game, never met Conan in the game thus far, but we've met Sonya and traveled with her a bit. So that's always fun. Then you can go to, obviously, dealing with dark sorcerers or beasts. There aren't a lot of beasts within the concept of Conan, but there are a few. Large lions of Set, sons of Set, man apes. Those are always really fun. You can see those on the various covers. Werewolf, werewolf, bullmen, which are kind of like minotaurs. Are something that you'll find within the concepts of Conan as well. Here's brooding Conan, sea Conan, so you can do a great sea adventure, because there's a lot of that along the Black Coast, where you can meet Belit or the pirates. Always a fun thing to do. But really, Conan is so much of it about it is travel. And just going from different world to world, by world I mean like nation to nation, traveling to all the different nations that are brought up within the Gazetteer, which is so rich with the course of Conan. And if you're dealing of it with any old resource material that you had, I had a huge collection of D20 Conan that I ended up selling a few years ago. But it's just a great resource if you're looking at it. There's so many great companies that have put out great resource material for Conan. Again, I run everything in fast, but you could run it in any of those systems, and you can always get my fast notes, which are below. Just ask me for them and I'll be happy to send them to you for free. Here you can see some of the women of Conan, and that's always a great wrinkle to the game if you're using it to have various women to be saved or women that are tough, such as Sonya or Belit or any of there are many of them. So it's kind of fun to have that and build it into the game too. I've done some sample characters that are in my notes as well for NPCs and followers. But nevertheless, Conan is just a fantastic system or setting to use within the fast system, because fast plays very very well with it, because you're talking about fodder folk where you can just slash your way through tons of mopes until you get to those bigger bosses, be they summoned summoned by sorcerers, or are a sorcerer, or a large warlord, anything like that. And there's so many stories out there via the comics and via uh, uh, Howard or any of the people, Elspreg de Camp, or anybody else who's kind of riffed off of that and written other Conan books or movies. So it's just a great resource for a GM to start in and do some great swords and sorcery work for the fantasy setting. And that today is the way I see Conan, and the way Conan works within the course of the fast system. Again, I think it works really, really well. It's something that we've played extensively over the course of over a year now, and done some really great things. You can bring people from, across the world, and have martial arts in it, which is always fun. We've done that too. So there's so many things to do within the concepts of this if you're not looking to play a standard fantasy D&D Forgotten Realms type setting. Play Conan. It's a great place to get your feet wet. So many resources. A lot of them can be found really, really cheap. And or even online. And there's also a great, obviously, a lot of the artwork that I used here, just you can find just great pieces online from an incredible artist all over the place. So they can give your characters inspiration as well to show them particular things. But nevertheless, that is Fast Conan on Fast Talking today. And again, if you want anything to do with how I run Conan, you can get my fast notes. Just look for my email down in the comments, or the comment piece below, and credits, and I'll be happy to send something to you. So otherwise, as always, as I say here at Art of the Genre, we'll see you soon, and great gaming.